Welcome back to the show. It's episode 167, Mormon News Roundup. I am D-Baze, your humble host. Welcome to one of the greatest programs on the interwebs. This is June 22nd, 2025. This is your agenda for today's news. We will be ruminating on the great and spacious beehive. I'm coming to you from Washington, D.C., the crossroads of the East where the truth runs free. We will talk about new polygamy revelation. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, the LDS Church hardly ever brings forth new revelation. We've got a new one this week, and it is about polygamy. This is a shocker. Mike Lee goes nuclear, which is one reason that my particular moniker here is Senator Mike Lee's nemesis. He is a Latter-day Saint, one of the most powerful men in the Senate. He has gone nuclear. I will tell you what he is up to. We're going to bring you more information about Mormon garment fashion. It is melting down the web, and many more random tidbits. Thank you so much for joining us. Starting right off the bat here, Mike Lee, this is what he tweeted out here just a few days ago. He tweeted out, "This is what happens when Marxists don't get their way." This is on, now to bring you up to speed, on June 14th, a gunman targeted a Minnesota state lawmakers, a couple of them, killing Melissa Hortman and her husband, wounding Senator John Hoffman and his wife that same weekend. This is what he posted here just this last weekend, a couple of days ago, on his personal X account. He says, "This is what happens when Marxists don't get their way." And he also tweeted out, "Nightmare on Walls Street." This is a shot here, insinuated the attack was the result of left-wing ideology, and even subtly blamed Governor Tim Walz. The post drew bipartisan backlash, which we're going to talk about here in a moment. This is a shameful tweet, and this individual here who enacted this violence should be condemned with everything that I can. I will condemn him at all costs. Senator Lee poured fuel on the fire in a rather unfortunate manner here. And I got a couple of reactions from Latter-day Saints and from Latter-day Saint adjacents. First, we'll start with John S. He said that Senator Lee's conduct here is a blight not only to my country, but to my religion. The damage that Lee has done and will continue to do to the church is really incalculable. I agree here that Senator Lee is a poor representative of Mormonism. In fact, this is what Burgess Everett tweeted out here. He said a top staffer to Senator Tina Smith emailed Mike Lee's top staffers on Monday about how much additional pain you've caused on an unspeakably horrific weekend. And this email here, if it is to be legitimate, which I believe that it is, does not do anything to walk back what Senator Lee tweeted out. He eventually did delete those tweets, but the damage has been done. I've got a couple of reactions here. First, we'll start with the Tomsters here, one of my favorite accounts out there on TikTok, kind of random, but he has a great sense of humor. He says, Mike Lee being the worst runs in the Lee family. So in recent days, Mike Lee has reminded us that he is a bum certified. Let's see what the Tomsters has to say about this one.
Bum, certified bum. And I'm here to remind you that being a bum runs in the Lee family. Those who are familiar with U.S. history and specifically Mormon history know about something called the Mountain Meadows Massacre, okay? This was out in Utah. There was this group coming from Arkansas traveling west, and they came into what is now known as Utah, and there was a Mormon militia there, not happy that this group was coming through, all right? And they murdered a lot of these people. They were dressed up as Native Americans as well, and they tried to pin it all on the Native Americans, these Mormon militiamen. One of these people, he approached the group. Like this went over a number of days. He approached the group with a white flag and said, "Hey, you know what? Too much blood has been shed. Let's just stop it." The group said, "All right." And then even more people from the Mormon militia killed people from the group that were coming west. Not even violently. They were just trying to come through. Now, one person, there should have been a lot of people, but only one person was found guilty by the law for this entire thing and put to death. That person, John D. Lee, a great grandfather of one Senator Mike Lee. Being a bum runs in the Lee family. So in recent days,
That is a brutal takedown. Yes, indeed. Mike Lee is the great-great-great-grandson of John Doyle Lee, the Mormon pioneer who was executed in 1877 for his role in the Mountain Meadows Massacre. It looks like stoking up violent behavior runs in the Mike Lee family. That much is for sure. Thanks for bringing that to us, the Tomsters. You should follow him over there on Twitter. And by the way, if you go to my series on my playlist here on the Mormon News Roundup, This Week in Exmormonism, you will see a compilation of the Tomsters' best and highlights of his viral reels. Thanks for bringing that to us, the Tomsters. You know, Jon Stewart also took a shot at the senior Mormon senator, faithful Latter-day Saint Mike Lee, saying, "What the F is wrong with this guy?" And the Salt Lake Tribune also poured on. Everybody here is poking holes in Mike Lee's credibility here. The Daily Show comedian devoted several minutes to the senator's ex-posts about the deadly Minnesota shooting, calling Lee the avatar of the insanity of the moment. This does not bode well for Mormon church membership here. If this is what Latter-day Saints are all about here, people are saying this is a pathetic excuse for a leader. Utah deserves better than this clown. Let's see what we got here.
Jon Stewart took aim at Utah Senator Mike Lee Monday night and didn't pull any punches. In a 28-minute segment, Stewart focused the last 4 minutes on Senator Lee's social media posts, specifically Lee's reaction on X, formerly Twitter, to a recent shooting in Minnesota that left one state lawmaker and her husband dead and another lawmaker and his wife injured. Lee had posted a photo of the shooting suspect with the caption, "This is what happens when Marxists don't get their way," and followed it with a pun and meme titled "Nightmare on Wall Street," a misspelled jab at Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Stewart mocked the juvenile tone of Lee's posts and criticized the senator's focus on partisan politics over empathy. Stewart also shared his own personal encounter with Mike Lee in 2019 while lobbying for 9/11 first responder health benefits.
One cop says his story about being in the tower that collapsed and the aftermath. When he told Senator Lee about that experience, Senator Lee smiled and said, "I bet you've got a lot of stories."
The senator has since deleted some of the posts about the shooting of the 2 Minnesota Democratic lawmakers and their spouses, but has so far not apologized for his remarks. And some misleading posts blaming the violence on the left remain on Lee's personal X page.
Very good sum up there, by the way. From my experience with interacting with Latter-day Saints online, I can tell you that Senator Lee's lack of empathy runs deep to the core of Mormonism. In my opinion, Mormonism strips empathy and compassion from individuals because it's all about perpetuating the institution, no matter the harm, never acknowledging the problems of the church. And I see a very similar sentiment here with Mike Lee and how he behaves. You know, even the Desireette News folks, even when the Desireette News took a shot at Mike Lee for this. Was this the right thing for the Desireette News to do? And by the way, where is Governor Cox and the GOP of Utah? They seem to be quite silent on this. And this is what we're getting here from Politico coming and connecting to the Desireette News editorial page here. The Desireette News condemned Lee's posts about the Minnesota shooting. So the Mormon church itself is not going to come out with a statement about these particular things because they don't weigh in on these political matters because they're terrified that they would lose their tax exempt status. Instead, they use their editorial page to reflect the senior Mormon church leaders' opinions of current events. So you can bet your bottom dollar that the senior Mormon church leaders are not cool with what Mike Lee has done here. They've condemned him through the Desireette News. That is an absolute fact. And, you know, where is the rest of those people? That is an excellent question. Why isn't anybody else on the right condemning these reprehensible tweets? That is a good question. And even the Salt Lake Tribune, see, Mike Lee is getting it from both sides. Not only is he getting it from the conservative, highly conservative Desireette News, the Salt Lake Tribune is taking a shot at him too. Senator Lee, this is from their letter to the editor, is a disgrace, and Utah is fine with that. Senator Lee is a disgrace. That's according to the Salt Lake Tribune. You know, I miss the days when we had Bob Bennett as a conservative senator in Utah. That was somebody that I could support. Mike Lee, on the other hand, who has called Donald Trump Captain Moroni, is someone that I cannot support. The apple has fallen far from the tree. In fact, Jim Bennett, the moderate Utah politician, has said indeed on a post here this week on, I believe it was by common consent. I don't have that particular link here for you, that when it comes to the Constitution and also his father's legacy of Bob Bennett, the apple indeed has fallen far from the tree with Mike Lee. And don't forget that he is one of the most popular Mormons on this planet. You know, I would put him personally as the second most powerful Mormon on the planet. I would say that Russell Marion Nelson, the 17th president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who wields an empire of $350 billion and rules and reigns with blood and horror over 17 million Latter-day Saints, is the number one most popular, or at least powerful Mormons on the planet. Maybe he's the most popular, hard to say. It could be Taylor Frankie Paul, by the way, who's the most popular Mormon on the planet. Not sure, but Senator Lee, I rank as number 2. So we have the second most powerful Mormon on the planet who has really stepped in it this week and has made a great deal of enemies and has not apologized, has not backed down. That's my last take here from Senator Mike Lee. Leave me a comment in the comment section. If you support what Senator Lee's doing, let me know what is it that I'm missing here, because it seems like an apology here from Mike Lee to those Minnesota constituents and everyone else is in order. And yet, just like the Mormon Church, it seems like Senator Lee rarely apologizes for anything, and that's just a chip off the old Mormon block. Now, changing gears here, the Mormon garment girlies are out there. This is absolutely insane. You know, the new tank top garments that are capless. They don't have caps. They're basically ready for your tank top. These are really, really hot. In fact, there is now a black market of these garments being sold on Reddit, being sold on the dark web for dozens of dollars over the asking price. This has created a run on the market because they are not generally available to the general population. They're only available to certain people who are in hot climates or are well connected. And this is absolutely crazy here. A couple of TikToks about these garments here. $50 for a garment top. You're joking, right? Just wear the damn tank top. Let's see what we got here.
TikTok be so fucking for real right now. Are you kidding me? Everyone's up in arms that I let my kid use my phone during sacrament meeting. That we have garment girlies over here selling their garments for like double, triple the value. She checking recommends. She doing the due diligence. What black market type of shit is happening right now?
What type of black market type of crap is indeed happening right now? This is insane. And yes, are these garment girlies who managed to get a hold of these garments? We don't know how, don't know exactly why. Now they're selling them for a serious markup, because when the church sells these in typically African countries or in the global south, they only sell them for a few pennies on the dollar. Now they're being sold for $40, $50 plus shipping and handling. They're making quite a racket off of these Masonic inspired underwear. And the question that this individual had here, which I have from TikTok here, this is just Eureka. Sorry if I don't have that name exactly correct. She's asking the question, are the people who are selling these garments to faithful Latter-day Saints, are they doing their due diligence? Are they checking the temple recommends and making sure that the individuals that they're selling these garments to are not drinking coffee, are paying a full tithe, and are honest in their dealings? I very much doubt it. This is setting up a serious black market in Mormon underwear. In fact, we're getting sellers who are reselling. The market is absolutely through the roof because people really want to get their hands on these particular garments here. In fact, it's not just the ladies that want the garments. Unpopular opinion here, men also love wearing the garments. This is a little known phenomenon here, specifically when they are the new garment tops. Now we have men and women together who have managed to get these garments. This is and women together now showing off what used to be considered porn shoulders, used to be highly immodest. Now this is a faith promoting narrative. In fact, we're seeing pictures of temple weddings in particular with women coming out of LDS temples now wearing more modern wedding dresses that show off their shoulders. This used to be scandalous. This used to cause a great deal of consternation, and now it is just par for the course. Yes, the garment girlies are going crazy. One more take here from people selling holy garments. Just a real quick story. I remember when I was doing a church history tour a couple of years ago up in Palmyra, in the birthplace of Mormonism, Manchester County, up in that area. You know, there is a garment store that anyone can go into as a member of the public to see all of these garments. And let me tell you, while I was walking through that store, the senior missionaries who were manning that, they were watching me like a hawk. You know, they didn't want me to get too interested in these garments. But anyway, that is a slight digression here. What about one more take here about people selling holy garments? I can't believe what I'm hearing here. This is unbelievable stuff.
Was selling garments. You saw a video of a girl who was selling garments, you guys. Garments. Are you kidding? I just checked and she took the video down. But she was selling them for like $40. Ooh, my cookies are ready. $40, you guys, plus shipping. Like, what in the world? That is wild. It feels illegal. I know it's not, but like it feels illegal. It just feels so wrong.
Feels wrong to be taking those garments, selling them for a serious markup here. The black market of these garments is going absolutely viral. Let me know in the comments below what you think about the black market. Is it perfectly fine to take something? It's capitalism. Is this capitalism just run amok where you buy something and then sell it for a profit? I mean, reselling is the capitalistic way, or is this taking things too far? Let me know in the comments down below. I have one of the biggest news articles, in my opinion, really of the entire year happened this week here. Folks, this is our featured news article here. This is from the Salt Lake Tribune. LDS Church finally publishes a polygamy revelation it insisted for years did not exist. Now, this is taking us way, way back here to the late 1800s here. John Taylor, the third president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who was a Canadian converted to the church, wrote way back in the late 1880s that the faith could never give up plural marriage, also known as polygamy. And then his immediate successor, Wilford Woodruff, did just that just 3 years later. See, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is built on the idea of modern revelation. And what we're going to see here is a new, really what the church is finally going to come kicking and screaming to the table to admit that, yes, John Taylor had a revelation that polygamy would never, ever be taken from the earth. And yet 3 years later, it was, according to his successor, after John Taylor died on the run, I believe in Kaysville, Utah, because he was being pursued by federal marshals for his illegal and disgusting practices of polygamy. And this is the thing here, folks. The LDS Church finally published that revelation after denying its existence for 140 years. It has now published a revelation. Let me tell you, in Mormonism, having a new revelation published is an exceptionally rare item. In fact, discounting the two official declarations, the one in 1978 and then the one in 1890, really the church has only canonized one revelation into the Doctrine and Covenants in the last 100 years. And I argue that the press releases that were associated with polygamy, the 1890 so-called manifesto and the 1978 rescinding of the priesthood ban for black members, I argue that those were more press releases than revelations, even though that they were canonized. But this is a big deal, folks. This is a big article here. A couple of takes here. I'm going to give you several takes here because I believe that this is one of the biggest articles of the year. Over there, Richie Steedman, one of my best buds over there at the Cultural Hall podcast, he said, here's the thing, folks. When the church denies it for a long time, and then that's the problem here, they don't address it. Not really. It's a little bit unnerving here. And this is from the religion news service with from the religious news service with, sorry, I forgot her name, with Jana Reese, right? She published this as well. The LDS Historical Department just published an 1886 polygamy revelation after denying that it existed for so long. And this isn't the first time that the church has pulled the, we don't have that, just kidding, we do. And even a faithful member like Richie Steedman has cause to pause here because it's quite unnerving to have the church deny its existence for so long and then just all of a sudden publish it, but not address anything about it. What's the deal with that? Good question, Richie. And Nemo the Mormon also takes a look at this as well here. He says, what do we do when a prophet of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints says that this that the polygamy is not going to stop, and then the next two prophets go ahead and stop it? This is what some people are perceiving to be a contradiction here. Let's see what Nemo's got going on.
Church just dropped a brand new revelation. Well, it's new to public view at least. It's a revelation given by John Taylor in 1886 in which he refers to the New and Everlasting Covenant, which is the name by which temporal and spiritual polygamy is known as practiced by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints until the late 19th and early 20th century. And make no mistake, this is a revelation. Those of you who are still running around correcting people on the name of the church because Russell M. Nelson called the nickname Mormon
a major victory for Satan
should, if you're being consistent, take the words of John Taylor in this revelation just as seriously. Of course, the church knows this, and that's probably why this revelation was released with no fanfare, but instead quietly added to the church's research library. But if you're the type of person I mentioned who hangs off of every word Russell M. Nelson utters and thanks God for the wonderful leadership and guidance of our beloved prophet, then I ask you this. Do you take John Taylor just as seriously when he said, "Thus saith the Lord, all commandments that I give must be obeyed by those calling themselves by my name, unless they are revoked by me or by my authority? And how can I revoke an everlasting covenant? For
Right.
I, the Lord, am everlasting, and my everlasting covenants cannot be abrogated nor done away with, but they stand forever."
Right. They cannot be done away with. They're going to stand forever. And yet they were done away with just 3 years later. Instead of standing forever, they only stood for a few more months. What a contradiction. Let us note here that Jon Taylor said, "Thus saith the Lord." Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, Latter-day Saints rarely use that term because it has a lot of weight and a lot of meaning in it. This has now been acknowledged as a true and living revelation. What the actual heck?
I have not revoked this law, nor will I, for it is everlasting. If you do take it seriously and don't try and hand-wave it away through special pleading, then what do you make of the fact that just 18 years after that revelation from God to his mouthpiece on earth, polygamy officially ended as a temporal practice in the Brighamite sect of the LDS movement and became an excommunicatable offense?
Now, let's just clarify that. 3 years later, we had the manifesto in 1890 where the church pretended to end polygamy, but it wasn't until, like Nemo said, until 1905 where the second manifesto where it became an excommunicatable offense, even though a few marriages even after that were solemnized with senior church leader approval here. So the church didn't embrace this revelation. They just released it quietly into its website here. What about why not the fanfare? Why not send somebody out to talk about this? That's because they don't have any answers as to why there is an apparent contradiction between the eternal nature of this law and the fact that it was done away with just a few months later permanently.
Let me know what you think in the comments.
Yes, he always says, let me know what you think in the comments. And I will say the same thing. Thanks for bringing that to us, Nemo. Very interesting stuff here. See, this is the problem here. We have what appears to be a major contradiction between how the manifesto supposedly ended polygamy, and yet it didn't here. This is to bring us back from Brian Buchanan here, historian on Mormon stories. He's going to talk about how the manifesto did not actually end polygamy. Instead, it was created to help Utah gain statehood. The manifesto itself, the ending of polygamy in 1890, it's not even really positioned as a divine revelation, even though it has been canonized. It was strictly for political purposes. And Wilford Woodruff himself most likely married someone after another polygamous wife after he issued the manifesto. In fact, D. Michael Quinn has researched at least 250 marriages that were solemnized after 1890. Let's get Brian to weigh in on this and bring us up to speed on the historical aspect of this.
The problem is how it is described, because if you hear a description of the manifesto, how is it portrayed? Always, it is the end of polygamy.
Yeah, the end of
right?
polygamy. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes, well, it's the beginning of the end of polygamy.
Right.
It's neither. And I get really mad at historians that will describe the manifesto as the end of polygamy,
Right,
or sometimes they'll say the end of like authorized polygamy. No, absolutely not. The manifesto is a press release as part of a project to gain statehood. That's it.
Because the top leaders of the church continue to not only sanction, but to perform plural marriages.
Right. And the problem is how it is described. Because if you hear a description of the manifesto, how is it portrayed?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Sorry, I should have stopped that a little bit earlier. Yes, it's the beginning of the end of polygamy, I suppose, but this is a direct contradiction to now Jon Taylor's 1886 revelation, which has been around for a long time, and a lot of historians way before the church finally acknowledged that this was a true and living revelation and that it wasn't a forgery of some kind, because the evidence is simply overwhelming that this revelation actually happened. We have a number of copies of it from people who are quite reputable. In fact, people who, even apostles, as I recall, who were excommunicated over polygamy are the ones who cited this 1886 revelation of Jon Taylor, saying, hey, he said it would never be taken from the earth, so we're going to continue doing it, and eventually became an excommunicatable offense that even a couple of apostles were excommunicated. See, and a couple of other takes here says, how long until the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints will canonize this revelation that they just acknowledged by their third prophet, Jon Taylor, who stated, thus saith the Lord? See, where's the canonization of this? I bet you $1 for a donut that they're not going to canonize this because they're embarrassed about this revelation, which is the reason that they hid this revelation for so long, or at least tried to. Thanks to the age of the internet, many sleuths out there were well aware of this. I'm not going to toot my own horn, but obviously I was well aware of this prior to the church finally admitting to it as well. And this reminds me of in 2014 when the church was finally brought to the table to admit that Joseph Smith had married up to 40 women, when this fact was well acknowledged prior to that point, even starting at the late 1990s by historians like Todd Compton. So yes, when will this be canonized? I doubt that it ever will be, because it shows a contradiction between thus saith the Lord, this will never be done away with. It will never be revoked. It is an everlasting covenant. It's one of the foundational pillars of the big Brighamite branch. And then just a few months later, it was done away with because of expediency in order to gain statehood. So much for the everlasting covenant, so much for Mormon prophets telling you the truth. Now, Stacker, one of my favorite X accounts out there, also tweeted this out. One now has to deal with the truth that the source is legitimate. And this is the most important thing here, folks. The first presidency denied this. See, is the first presidency back in, it's a first presidency statement back in 1933. Was alleged, see, let me just read this to you. It is alleged on September 1886 that President John Taylor received a revelation from the Lord, the purported text of which is given in publications circulated apparently by or at the instance of the same organization. As to this pretended revelation, it should be said that the archives of the church contain no such revelation. Liar, liar. See, this is a first presidency statement. Again, and this is from 1933. Continuing on, the archives contain no record of any such revelation, nor any evidence justifying a belief that such revelation was ever given. From the personal knowledge of some of us, from the uniform and common recollections of the presiding quorums of the church, from the absence in the church archives of any evidence whatsoever justifying any belief that such a revelation was given, we are justified in affirming that no such revelation exists. This, folks, is Mormon gaslighting in real time. In 1933, they say, trust us, we were there, we know the truth, nothing like this happened. And now in 2025, we have the direct opposite story. So not only is there a contradiction in the revelation, meaning that polygamy was supposed to be everlasting, now we have a contradiction by the first presidency in 1933 saying, oh, don't worry, trust us, it never happened, to now it's the reality. What a contradiction. What an absolute mess. Now, one of my favorite historians out there is Dr. Benjamin Park, and I do have a compilation of his TikToks on this channel on This Week in Exmormonism. You should really check it out. He is a diamond in the rough. He's just started a YouTube channel about 6 months ago. Very entertaining stuff here. This is what he said. The LDS Church has just released a significant and long speculated document, an 1883 revelation in John Taylor's own hand. This is the most important thing. This is John Taylor's handwriting here, folks, proclaiming that polygamy would never, ever, ever be abolished. The video introduces the document and a little bit more about it. I believe he has a longer form video, but let's hear what Dr. Park says about this. This is about a 3-minute clip.
Was a huge day in Mormon history because the LDS Church released a significant document that has long been the center of speculation. It concerns polygamy, secrecy, revelations, and the origins of Mormon fundamentalism. Let me explain. When John W. Taylor, a former apostle, was on trial for excommunication in 1911 for continuing to solemnize plural marriages after the 1890 manifesto, he declared that his father, John Taylor, who was the LDS Church president in the 1880s, had received a revelation saying that polygamy would never end. And he waved around a revelation in John Taylor's own hand saying as much. That revelation then became a core part of the growing fundamentalist movement in the 19-teens and 1920s, as it was connected to the narrative that John Woolley told, that John Taylor received this revelation in September of 1886 and then ordained a secret council that would continue the practice of polygamy even if the church ended it.
Right. This is the most important thing here, is that Woolley is really one of the grandfathers of Mormon fundamentalism, the split from the Brighamite branch into the FLDS and some of the other sects out there. They were looking at this document saying, look, this is a revelation that we accept. John Taylor was the one who really brought forth, he's the father of the foundational, of the fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because of this particular revelation that has now been acknowledged as true.
Then in 1933, the LDS First Presidency, especially Heber Grant and J. Reuben Clark, wanted to quell this growing Mormon fundamentalist group. And so they issued a statement that came to be known as the Third Manifesto, which denounced rumors of this pretended revelation that they claimed did not exist. And this was the start of Mormon fundamentalists as a separate movement outside of the LDS Church. However, within a month of the church issuing that statement, one of John W. Taylor's widows came forward and said, I have this revelation that you claim doesn't exist. And that revelation in John Taylor's hand then went into LDS First Presidency's records, where it remained secluded, and the church continued to deny its existence.
Right. This is a typical pattern here of things that are unflattering for the church or do not advance the current church's leadership's particular narrative. They take documents, they take books, William Clayton diaries, the William McClellan collection, all of these things, they take them into church presidency vaults. The letter book 1 of Joseph Smith's first vision, the 1832 account of the first vision, they take these items, they put them into the vaults, and then they lie to people and tell them that they don't have these things because why? Because they don't fit the church's particular narrative. This was a common practice of people like Joseph Fielding Smith. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he was one of the people, as the church historian starting in the 1920s, that had taken some of these items and taken them off of the streets. This reminds me of the Mark Hoffman situation, where Mark Hoffman in the 1980s had a bunch of documents that were supposedly early Mormon documents that reflected unflattering things about church history, and the church, through Gordon Hinckley and others, tried to purchase those in order that they would die and never see the light of day. This is a common practice of the church trying to control its own narrative.
Over the ensuing decades, this alleged revelation remained at the core of fundamentalist arguments of the LDS Church losing its way and going back on John Taylor's revelation, whereas the LDS Church continued not to correct the record and allowing J. Reuben Clark's 1933 statement that it was a pretended revelation to stand.
Right.
Flash forward to this week in 2025, and the LDS Church's catalog now has that revelation available, along with scans that you can read yourself. This is the first time the LDS Church is acknowledging, at least implicitly, the reality of this revelation in John Taylor's handwriting. Maybe I'll do further videos on its significance.
Yeah, now I believe that he has on his YouTube channel done a longer video form. That's just a 3-minute overview. Perfect sum up here, where it shows that the third manifesto, the 1933 statement of the First Presidency, was at a minimum highly disingenuous and probably much more like lying for the Lord, which is a Mormon favorite. By the way, if you can hit the thumbs up on this particular podcast, I'd be very grateful for that. We have new episodes that go live every Sunday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here at the Mormon News Roundup. I'd be very grateful for you to join me in that live stream. More reactions here from Stellar Parallax over there on X. He says, correct, this wasn't the prophet saying, I had the impression, or I felt a feeling. He said, thus saith the Lord. And it was Jesus Christ, the creator of the world, directly addressing John Taylor. So this is always what it comes down to is, was the Mormon Jesus wrong, or was John Taylor wrong? I don't see how one of these individuals cannot be wrong. And if Mormon church presidents and prophets cannot be relied upon to give you the revelation from a supernatural source, then what good are they? That's the fundamental question here. But don't worry, ladies and gentlemen. Jasmine over there, my favorite shill for the Mormon church, she's going to try to clear all of this up for us by giving us the apologetic spin that she is famous for.
Saint history, for the first time ever, the church has acknowledged and published a controversial revelation from Prophet John Taylor that some have argued means polygamy should have never ended. It's an 1886 document handwritten by John Taylor that was never published, never canonized, and it talks about how God's covenants are everlasting and cannot be revoked in the context of whether the church should continue polygamy despite all this government persecution going on.
Yeah.
At the time, John Taylor himself was in hiding from federal agents. So if this were a true, legitimate revelation from a prophet of God, why would the church discontinue polygamy just a few years later in the 1890 manifesto? And even more so, why would the church deny the existence of this revelation in 1933? To find the answer, go to my YouTube channel where I just posted a video going into depth on this new messy history.
And I will spare you the time of going to Jasmine's YouTube channel to talk about this. She tries to spin the narrative, but I don't see how it can be spinned. If polygamy was revealed from on high and was supposed to be an everlasting part of the restoration of all things, and was confirmed to the Lord's mouthpiece on earth with John Taylor saying, thus saith the Lord, it shall never be done away with, then how the hell was it done away with 3 years later? Who is right here? John Taylor, the Mormon Jesus, or how about none of the above? More reactions. I told you this is a big article here from David Murdoch. The Mormon Church finally released yesterday a document from John Taylor, a quote-unquote prophet, stating that polygamy was an eternal principle that could never be revoked. This was after it supposedly had been. So the entire narrative the Mormon Church has spun about the end of polygamy was a lie. It seems the fundamentalists were right. This religion has no credibility. So yeah, the fundamentalists out there who were eventually excommunicated from the church, though not right away in 1890, they had it right all along. So where is the credibility of the Brighamite branch if it doesn't follow eternal doctrine? That's the fundamental question here. That's enough on this new revelation. I have a few other tidbits that I want to bring to you before I let you go. These are 1-hour episodes, try to get you in and out of here. There is a new podcast out there from Alyssa Grunfeld, the giant in Exmormonism, called Architecture of Abuse. This is episode 2. I will give you a snippet here with Alyssa Grunfeld and attorney Tim Kosanoff. They're going to peel back the onion here with regards to the architecture of abuse of the Mormon Church's troubling history and continued practice of covering up CSA and failing to protect its parishioners here. This is the response here. A talk with journalist Murray Jones of the podcast Heaven's Helpline about the financial and professional resources the LDS Church uses to protect itself from liability. Let's see what Alyssa Grunfeld is drumming up.
The church operated something called a helpline that was used by ecclesiastical leaders so that if they had a question about how to approach a specific instance with someone who had come to them to confess something and they didn't quite know how to handle it or how to respond, that ecclesiastical leader could use this helpline to get advice from the church. Can you explain how that worked and kind of give background as to what that was within the organization?
Well, what you described is that's the cover story. The real story is it's a helpline for the church and its lawyers to identify cases before anybody talks to the cops, lawyers, reporters, or any of this leaks out.
From what I understand, the church operated something called a helpline that was
I haven't had a chance to watch any of the rest of this, but it is on my to-do list here. You can go to architectureofabuse.com and you can watch the full episodes of this. I believe that there are 6 episodes here in conjunction with the Heavens Helpline, which also I believe has 6 episodes here. Very interesting stuff here from Alyssa Grenfell. A couple other articles here that have hit my desk this week as well here. The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. Folks, I'm just going to give you one reaction here from this particular phenomenal movement out there. I can't tell you that even though the season 2 has wrapped up and some of the articles have died down, this is still really big here because they're teasing a reunion of the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. Even though season 2 has wrapped up shooting and has been released, people can watch and binge watch all of the episodes. It's been a couple of months here. Just want to bring you one update here because Jesse says that it sucks for Demi that she wasn't at the Mormon Wives reunion. Did they have a reunion? What's going on with these scandalous gals? They're still making huge headlines out there. Absolutely enormous.
Oh gosh, it was really fun. I had never done one before. It was a long day, so we were all exhausted at the end. But I would say Demi takes a lot of heat, even though she's not there. We talk about her a lot, so that kind of sucks for her. But I think Whitney got some heat as well, just kind of clearing up all the drama from season 1 and seeing where we're at with her. But I feel like everyone had their chance in the hot seat, so it's going to be a good reunion. Yeah, I feel like we got to have a lot of good conversations about things that transpired in both season 1 and season 2. And I feel like we all came out of it a little bit closer and able to kind of put things like water under the bridge. And then I think even more of it will play out in the next season. So luckily I like to say the reunion kind of drops the breadcrumbs for the next season. So it answers things, but it also probably begs more questions that will then be answered later on. We definitely got more than a few days notice. I think it was a few weeks, and I believe it because I know she was in Disney, but I do think it was convenient. I actually was hosting a class the day of the reunion, and I had 60 people from out of state flying in to learn from me. And I still came to the reunion, and I lost a lot of money doing that. So I would say that if I could make it work, she should have as well. But I understand her situation and being on a family trip and with her mom going through things, like I would never fault her for that. But I do think it was not to her benefit for not coming because there were so many things we said about her that I wish she could have been there to answer. A little bit. I do feel like it was a little convenient because I do think that in this situation, like we all had to move things and I missed my class to make it work. So I do feel like at the end of the day, we all should have been there. And I think that her watching the reunion back is going to probably create more drama and more tension. So maybe we'll need a reunion part 2. Who knows? I think after the season aired, we all kind of wanted to subside the drama because there was so much of it, and we kind of like agreed like we're all going to keep the peace and not be crazy anymore. So I do feel like if we had a conversation where there were apologies and accountability, in my opinion, she needs to do that a little more than I do. But if we were both able to come together and say like, I'm sorry for this, I'm sorry for this, I could see us being civil, cordial, we're coworkers, we're going to have to work together. I can totally be her friend for that, but I will never be her best friend. It will never be what it was.
It's so sad to me that they won't be best friends. I can't tell you how much sleep
Oh gosh.
I can't tell you how much sleep I'm going to lose over the fact that these two individuals will not be best friends. But yes, we've had the season 1 of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. We just had the season 2. Now we have shot the reunion episode. I believe it is 1 or maybe 2 episodes here that will premiere here on July 1st, 2025. We will get to hear more about these gals and what they're up to. Real quick, last couple of tidbits here. I saw this LDS Church plans to buy, or has actually gone ahead and bought 46 acres in Kahului for $20 million for another temple plan. The church already has a couple of temples in the Sandwich Islands here. And this is the thing here, $20 million just for the acre. See, the average Mormon temple costs about $35 million, but obviously the real estate in Hawaii is highly expensive. And just the land alone for this new Kahului temple will be $20 million. If you add on construction costs for that temple, you're probably approaching, depends on the size, maybe a $60 million building. And let's not forget that there's already a couple of temples in Hawaii spending a lot of money on acquiring not only real estate, but temple properties in general. Very interesting stuff here. And finally, a behind the scenes shot here of the Missionary Training Center. I just saw this a couple of minutes ago. Very interesting. A snapshot, a candid camera of Dallin H, the prophet in waiting, the number 2 man of the Mormon Church. Let's see what he's going to do at the Missionary Training Center.
This is Oaks. He's so cute. Oh my gosh.
There he is.
I'm gonna cry.
That is the type of adulation that you get from the true believing Mormons. You hardly ever see any candid videos of the senior Mormon church leaders. He's got his skis out there. Oh my gosh, he is looking thin. He is looking pretty good for a 93-year-old man. The adulation that you get from these TBM videos are highly interesting, in my opinion here. She said she's going to cry. Well, you know, I'm kind of feeling a little bit like crying too, but it's not for the same reasons here. You two girls are fangirling over President Oaks. Oh my gosh. And this is my favorite comment here. It says, I love when Sweet Dallin oversaw the electroshock therapy at BYU. So tender. And other comments here, we don't worship the apostles. Well, you could have fooled me with how much you were quote unquote feeling the spirit. He is so cute, and people are calling him Dallin. This is absolute peak cringe for me. This is a quick snapshot into Mormon church leadership at the Missionary Training Center. I want to thank my Patreons for supporting this particular podcast. Thank you so much for being a part of the Mormon News Roundup. I'd like to thank in particular Scab, RMW, David, Blaine, Brent, and especially Sophronia. Thank you so much for supporting the Mormon News Roundup. And also to our YouTube members out there, Emmerich, Starla, Jeffrey, Garrick, Lee Mortensen. It has been a pleasure, folks, to ruminate with you on the Great and Spacious Beehive. Yes, my name is D-Vase. I am talent on loan from Kolob. I want to thank you for being here. Always think celestial, and remember that no unhallowed hand can stop the Mormon News Roundup from progressing.
I command you, as the Son of God, to subscribe to the Mormon News Roundup, or I will consciously torture you forever in everlasting burning fire. Amen.